talk about a test, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it and deep dive in a moment, but a test is indeed coming up for the Falcons. They take on the Steelers, and they're both kind of those teams where they show shades of brilliance or shades of greatness or shades of strong goodness, and then they kind of fall back to the median. So we're going to see what happens this coming week. But if you want to know what the odds makers are thinking about that game, go to betonline.net. That's your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Even we as sports journalists and talk show hosts, if you will, we kind of check it out to kind of see what the trends are as well. And that's not just in the NFL, by the way, that's in the NBA and of course, Major League Baseball when it's in season, but also for some of the niche sports like MMA, golf, tennis, you can go and get all of that information right there. Even college football, there's a big game coming up, the SEC championship game on Saturday. Get your information there. Now, as far as that Falcons Steelers game, as of now, Aaron, the Falcons are 1-point favorites over the Steelers, according to betonline.net. And the over under is around 42. We'll see if that stays. But again, you guys, if you want to know, go ahead and monitor it there. They've got podcasts just like this one where you can get all your information. So again, it's real simple. BetOnline.net, because that is where the game starts now. That's where the game starts for those who want to bet on Falcons Steelers. But unfortunately, the game, at least for one guy, has ended for this season, and that is Kyle Pitts. Of course, Aaron, we just got the news that it's official. Kyle Pitts had season-ending surgery, and so, of course, we were expecting him to be gone for at least 4 weeks, probably wouldn't get him back until 15, 16, 17, one of the last games of the season, if you got him back. But now we know we're not getting him back for good. So my question to you is this. We know that the two bigs who went down at the same time were Kyle Pitts and Taquan Graham. TQ, obviously, the Falcons missed him greatly on Sunday, but you saw what the Falcons were able to do on Sunday on offense to some degree in the passing game. But what do you feel like is the biggest loss now that you know for sure you're not going to see 8 on the field again this season?
Well, I think you can make a pretty good case for TQ being the bigger loss, given what Washington was able to do on the ground against them.
Agreed.
And, it wasn't as if they were like a stellar run defense with TQ on the field, but it did feel like they were good enough, earlier in the season to sort of get the job done there. But I still look at Kyle Pitts as a difference maker, even if he's not doing it on the stat sheet. It does feel like it's not a coincidence that the Falcons offense really struggled to put points on the board without Kyle Pitts, even though that we know that the strength of their offense is their running game. So I still feel like having Pitts makes this offense better. And we know that the thing that's kind of driving the bus for the Falcons is their offense. It's the running game. And, what's interesting to me was someone was asking me this on Twitter about they should be able to run this week against the Steelers. And it's like, well, they've been able to run pretty much every week against whoever they do. But like the thing that kind of makes the difference between their ability to win games and lose games is if one of these other aspects of their offense shows up, and that's either the passing game, that's either the defense making plays, getting stops, getting turnovers, or, doing what CP did a couple of weeks ago or earlier in the season with that block punt, special teams making a play. So part of me kind of wonders, that's where you kind of need a Kyle Pitts. That's where you kind of need to take on Graham. Basically you asked me what's the bigger loss. I kind of come down on both sides of it. I don't really have a definitive answer for you.
Yeah, no, I could make the case, and I see how you could make the case there as well, because like you said, the run game, it stands for itself, and you have to give a lot of credit to even the running core by committee when Cordero Patterson was out a couple of weeks. So that tells you that that's truly a strength that the Falcons can rely on every week. But you kind of called something out just a minute ago, and I agree with you. I think it's always what's going to be the X factor week to week that's the complement to the run game in order for the Falcons to get the win, or at least put themselves in position to win. And like you said, each week it's maybe been a different, the difference maker might be maybe not Kyle Pitts on the stat line, but maybe there's a key block that he gave, or maybe there's just the ability to say, hey, don't think he's just that Marcus Mariota is automatically just going to go to Drake London, or it seems like even, an OZ or a Demir Bird have been favored targets of his. But when you have Kyle Pitts out there, it just at least keeps the defense honest. And then, of course, we've seen a couple different times where one member of the defense has literally sealed the game in the end. And then you talked about special teams as well. So yeah, that's kind of where when you lean to Kyle Pitts, you say, wow, that's kind of an X factor, one more X factor that Arthur Smith doesn't have to work with in the toolbox. And then it kind of takes you to this Sunday as well. Like, okay, fine. You're not getting KP back. You're probably not going to get TQ back. So now going into this final game before the bye, what's that looking like? Especially when, now, first of all, Aaron, let's face it, nobody wants to win the darn NFC South. I don't know what the deal is, but nobody wants the damn crown.
Yeah.
But if somebody did want to win it, whether that's the Falcons looking over their shoulders at the Bucs, or the Bucs looking over, their shoulder at the Falcons, it seems like those two kind of sort of want to win it. So that makes me feel like, you could kind of look at this Falcons Steelers game as a bit of a must win if the Falcons want to at least keep pace with the Bucs to win the division, which is probably at this point their only path to the playoffs.
Yeah, and like you can't even count out the Saints, right?
I know, God help us.
They got the Bucs this week. They got the Falcons after the bye week. So it's one of those things where like pretty much this whole division is up for grabs. No one wants to win it. And if the Falcons lose on Sunday, it's just only adding fuel to that fire. But they still won't be out of it because they have some of these division games coming up. So yeah, no one's going to win this. I think it's going to all boil down to that Week 18 game between the Falcons and Bucs, and everybody's just going to basically just keep tripping over themselves to try to take control of this division. But I think you're right. If the Falcons take care of business against the Steelers, they at least have a little bit more control over their destiny, and then they'll go into the bye week and then have an opportunity, with a divisional game against the Saints. And then you have, winnable games against the Ravens and Cardinals. Those teams have not been particularly great. The Ravens started off really strong, but have kind of faded as of late. And then, of course, you have that Week 18 game. So the Falcons still have a chance here. They just have to sort of, it's similar to the conversation we just had about the Hawks. They have to just start taking care of business.
Yes, indeed, because they're going to have their hands full. It was almost like identical productivity when you look at what the Commanders were able to do against the Falcons and when you look at what the Steelers were able to do against the Colts. Both teams, of course, using running backs by committee, although it was primarily Brian Robinson for the Commanders, and before Najee Harris went down, it was Najee. But ultimately speaking, both of those teams were able to get exactly 172 yards on those respective defenses. So it'll be interesting to kind of see, like you said, as the Steelers offense is kind of finding its way, how that's going to look for the Falcons, especially when you're talking about a quarterback in Kenny Pickett, who's a bit more mobile and a bit more serviceable, I'll say, in certain ways versus a Taylor Heineke. Now, the other thing I was thinking about is this, and initially before we got the news, we talked about, the impact of certain players as far as the decision, how that's going to impact the Falcons in terms of their decision to bring them back or not bring them back if they're available. Now we know for sure there's no KP, but that's still a legitimate conversation for QB1, because if the Falcons lose to the Steelers, and let's say everything kind of goes not in the Falcons' favor, let's say the Bucs actually, get a win or what have you, and then the Falcons find themselves darn near mathematically eliminated from the ability to win the division, then do you, at this point in the season, at this bye, talk about, hey, do we need to trot out that other guy for QB1 on the other side of the bye?
Yeah,
I gotta ask.
It seems like every week we bring this up. It's like, is this going to be the week?
Won't die.
Is this going to be the week? And if they don't take care of business against the Steelers, I think we're going to be having the exact same conversation we've been having for 8 weeks now. Yeah. Is this going to be the week where it makes sense to play Desmond Ridder, that other guy? And I feel like Arthur Smith is going to continue to deny at this point in time. But yeah, this is kind of really the last real chance to really make that quarterback switch, given sort of the off week and probably the extra practice week, because we know Desmond Ridder hasn't really been getting any reps in during the season because the backup quarterbacks are basically, out there on the scout team running the opposing team's offense rather than the actual team that they play on's offense. So he's going to need those extra reps during the bye week if he is going to eventually make a start. So this is kind of it, where it's like if Arthur Smith is not willing to make a change after this Sunday, regardless of the result, then I don't think we're going to see that change at any point this year.
Yeah, I would agree. I think so much is now predicated on that Sunday game. And I think depending on I would say definitely a loss, but even if we have another decidedly poor performance from one, then I think the conversation ratchets itself up. And I say ratchets itself up, Aaron, because they cannot convince me that that conversation hasn't been happening at Flowery Branch the same way it has been happening everywhere else in Atlanta Metro. I am sure there's been conversation and commentary about it all along. So good luck making us think otherwise. But hey, look, we'll see. We'll keep our eyes on it for you guys, and of course, as well, we just kind of look. And I'm kind of interested to see because we got a little peek into it. Not that it's going to affect anything necessarily Sunday, but of course, we also found out that Elijah Wilkinson was basically back with the ability to practice. So back in sort of that mix of what's going on with the O line. And we think that's important because, Elijah Wilkinson was interesting because he was kind of up and down at the guard position, but certainly had some moments. And it'll be interesting to see when he's eligible to be activated back to the 53-man roster, if he's actually going to be put back in a position to start.
Yeah, definitely. The Falcons have had musical chairs at that left guard position all year long.
I call it left shark, by the way. Like back at the Super Bowl, just
Yeah.
doing his own thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, is it Wilkinson? Is it Chuma Adoga? Is it Kobe
Right.
Gossett? Now Jalen Mayfield's possibly back in the mix. So they have options. I don't know if any of those are good options, but, they'll basically have to sort of figure it out. And, we got 5 games left, and we might see 5 different starters over these next 5 games, given how the last couple of weeks have gone.
Exactly.